Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Orangebloods Modcast. There's three of us today. I'm Jeff Ketchum, that's Anwar Richard, and Alex Dunlap, Jason Sukamel in San Antonio for the well, it's not even the U.S. Army All-America game anymore. It's just the All-America game, but it's still down in San Antonio. He's down there to catch some practice. So it'll just be the three of us. Do us a solid. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, do all of those things that we love you to do. And also know that today's Modcast, as always, brought to you by the guys over at Dead Soxy. You get a 25% discount over at deadsoxy.com if you use the promo code Orangebloods. Let me read you their little deal today. Step into the new year in style. If you haven't made that move already, you need to do so by experiencing the difference that a quality sock makes. Go over to deadsoxy.com and enter that promo code, like I said a second ago, orangebloods.com, or just Orangebloods, I should say. Get that 25% discount on all orders. As they continue to grow, they want to extend a special thank you to the continued support of Orangebloods community. The folks at Dead Soxy constantly striving to improve their quality, relationships, and customer experiences. Again, use that promo code Orangebloods, and you get 25% off all orders. Happy New Year's from the guys over at Dead Soxy. Fellas, by the way, Chris Nelson, you wouldn't hate socks if you had Dead Soxy socks, just so you know. Don't be hating on the socks.
If you're not wearing socks, your feet are funky as hell in those sneakers, man. That's all I gotta say. Like, your feet are funky, them shoes are funky, Chris. We know you got funky feet if you ain't wearing socks.
It's basically what he just admitted to.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
I have funky Deion Sanders feet.
hopefully with 10 toes at least. But yes.
Have I forgotten about the Deion Sanders thing? I don't know.
He did a deal with Shannon Sharp like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
And he was getting a pedicure during the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And Shannon Sharp made fun of his feet the entire time. And it was like, if you don't want your feet made fun of, maybe don't do an interview when you're getting a pedicure. Just memo to everybody out there watching this. If you don't like your feet, don't invite people with cameras around when you're getting them treated. We're going to talk a lot of Texas football today, so feel free to get your super chat questions in. We will take them. I think the goal of today's conversation between myself, Alex, and Anwar is to inspect the Texas football team going from 2022 to 2023. The bowl game has been played. We know how that rolled out. And now we've got a Texas football roster that will have freshmen coming in, some portal additions as well. But there's still a lot of remaking that has to be done in order for this team to eventually emerge in 2023 as the team that Steve Sarkisian and his bosses would want the Texas football team to be going into his third season. So we're just going to go position by position with what's there, what's coming in, and what really over the course of the next 9 months needs to happen in order for this Texas football team to not be losing in the Alamo Bowl at this time next December. Let's just start off with the quarterback position. We'll start on offense and work our way through defense. Anwar will be the discussion of the offseason. It will be Quinn Ewers and how much better he can get, the arrival of Arch Manning and what that means, and then kind of the wild card in the entire conversation in Malik Murphy, who may have as much raw talent as either of them, but maybe not quite the same sticker value with regards to recruiting ranking and expectations and all of that stuff. As we have officially our first quarterback conversation of 2023, in your mind, what needs to happen?
We need to see the Quinn Ewers that essentially would be 2 games and I'd have to put 3 to make 2, and really a little bit more than that, actually. So we're talking the first quarter of Alabama. We're talking OU, and then we're talking the second half against Washington. So I said 3, but really that's still only like a few quarters. That's still like 7 quarters and not really 8 to make like 2 kind of full games. But that's what we have to see, I think, going forward. Like that guy who looked so great against Bama, the guy who played so well against OU, and then the guy who looked great in the second half against Washington. Sarkisian's task is to eliminate everything that happened in between, right? Everything that happened in between all that 4-game stretch to end the season, that everything that happened after the OU game, that's Sarkisian's task. I think there's 2 things that Sarkisian has to do well, Catch, because there is going to be obviously the Quinn Ewers conversation, but I also think, as you brought up something from the show yesterday, that it's kind of resonated with me. I think Sarkisian has to do a better job of making sure the backup quarterback is ready. When you started listing off the examples, Catch, of guys who came in who were the backups and then had to take over, a la what we see here at TCU, I think he's got to do a better job of making sure if Quinn's not ready, if he gets dinged up, if he's hurt, whatever, that there's not like a drop-off where you just tell yourself, like, you know what the hell to do, or if he's struggling, you don't feel like you can go to someone else. So I think, one, he's got to be able to get Quinn better. But I think whoever the number 2 is, Catch, I think that person, there can't be a significant drop-off where you just say to yourself, you got nowhere to go.
No, it's a really good point, in that we've seen Kansas State, TCU, and Baylor over the course of the last 2 seasons need to go to the backup quarterback at various points. And the break wasn't hit. It was still all gas, no brakes, no pun intended. Actually, a little bit of pun intended. In terms of their offensive ideology, they didn't use that as an excuse for the offense kind of ramping down a little bit. And I think we did see that a little bit when Hudson Card came in this season. There was a feeling of he needed to have his hand held up until like the 3rd game he started. And then they seemingly started to feel comfortable, and it probably keeps you from going where you need to go. Alex, kind of the same question, just with regards to the quarterbacks. They've got their starter coming back, and he's a former 5-star. This is a guy that arrives with NFL projections. What does a guy with NFL upside need to do when there was less upside shown in year 1 than there was at times just problems?
Well, I mean, they're getting their starter back. I don't know exactly what that means. I agree with what Anwar said. There was, the times that we saw him look like the way that we thought he would look, during the 2022 season were fleeting. And I think what was most disappointing about it to a lot of people was that after when he went out of that Alabama game looking so good, people were like, oh, we finally got it. But, just our luck as Texas fans, the minute our quarterback comes on, it's looking like we're going to beat Alabama, all this stuff. It's just wheels up for the season. He gets hurt, and the people were just, pegging all their hopes to when this guy comes back, it's just going to be the same as it was then. And it really wasn't. I don't think he ever got back to that level, despite the fact that I do agree he looked much better in the second half of the bowl game than he did in the first. In the first half, I thought he looked miserable. I thought it was terrible. The second half, he was, really good. He was on target. It was Xavier Worthy that couldn't catch, which I'm sure you guys. I haven't watched the most recent video, but I'm sure you guys in your reaction video to the game talked all about that already. I'm sure it's been touched on, but
and we will get to Xavier Worthy and the wide receivers in a little bit.
Yeah, but I think that my view on the position hasn't changed much. I think it should be a wide open competition coming into spring. I think it should be a wide open competition, and I think if Quinn Ewers continues to be the Quinn Ewers of 2022, it's been too inconsistent. He needs to take a step forward. And you talk about these 5-star talents and these 5-star athletes, and I was reminded sort of how some of these guys, it can take a while for the chickens to come home to roost with them. Whenever Jared Stidham came in the game for Derek Carr this last week for the Raiders and looked like you're just like, whoa. Like you don't want to say he could be the future of the team, but he looks like a guy that he looked really good, right? So sometimes it's just like the situation wasn't right. The talent was there. He goes to the wrong offense in college. I mean, I forget where did he play for, like Gus Malzahn or something? Like, I forgot what happened with it. But
signed with Baylor and then went to Auburn.
Okay, right. But, it was like he goes – and then I think he transferred at some point. Like, and so it's like wires got crossed. Things just didn't happen. The development didn't happen right. He gets stuck as a backup quarterback in the NFL, finally gets a shot. At that point, you see the talent come – I mean, I understand how those kinds of things can happen. But Quinn Ewers has had a little bit of a career like that too so far, in his life. I think it's a matter of, the talent's there. We've seen it in practice. We've seen it versus air. He seems to have the mentality for it. He could maybe use a little bit of Hudson Card in him, a little bit of just a tiny bit of timidness. He doesn't have much of it. I think for some of these guys, the situation has to coalesce. When it coalesces, and it's going to have to come together for Quinn in 2023, because if we get the same Quinn that we got in 2022, he's going to get beaten out. Like the talent underneath him, now that it's seasoned with Malik Murphy, now that we have Arch Manning coming in, he's going to get beaten out if it doesn't come together for him soon.
On one hand, you're talking about a young quarterback, and I've been making the case for a while, even when you and I were talking about, hey, there could be some bad games ahead, and we disagreed on what his performance level would look like. It was always centered around, sometimes it just takes guys a while to fully develop. So it could just be that Quinn Ewers is on a natural kind of developmental plane, that it was always going to be some struggles for a young guy, but young guys get better sometimes, right? I mean, you and I also have a conversation, it seems like 10 times a year, where just because a senior is a senior doesn't mean he's any better than he was as a junior. It's just this thing that we like to invent in our heads that getting older makes you better. But the possibility does exist that Quinn Ewers is just on his natural developmental track, and only because he played so early are we so critically inclined to view where he is right now. Mm-hmm. On the other side of things, though, he's a player that people inside the program before this season ever started said he really needs to hit the playbook a little harder. There's a mental side of the position that he doesn't quite have mastered, that a guy like Hudson Card, they felt like had a lot more mastered. There's leadership. Even Quinn says in the postgame the other night, I've got to do better in terms of being a leader on this team. Everybody points at his footwork and says that's got to get better. What is realistic in terms of what to expect from Quinn Ewers in terms of improvement over the next 9 months? And how much are some of these things you either have it or you don't? You either are a bookworm or you're not. You're either an alpha leader or you're a beta. Like I'm somewhat conflicted in terms of what my proper set of expectations for a 19, 20-year-old young man should look like, given that there's actually a lot of stuff he has to work with.
Yeah, Catch. I think when the conversation with Quinn becomes a little complicated when we start from like the genesis of him coming to Texas, right? The belief from everyone within the building was this was a 2-year deal for Quinn. So there was this year he's going to look great. Next year he looks great, and then he's done. That was the plan. Everyone had that kind of, that's the plan that they're checking off. So no one really, now that he showed some struggles, now it's back. Now it's like, he's young. He's growing, he's developing. You know how young quarterbacks are, but that's what no one was saying that going into the season, Catch, that about the youth, and you need to be patient and give him time to grow and learn and develop. And young guys have hiccups. Like that was never the narrative, right? Catch, we know the narrative was he goes, plays, 2 years, and he's a first round pick and he's out. So now that I think what we have to do in the relates of that is the conversation to say, all right, we got to strip it down. 5-star, that was great, but that was back in high school. That was leading up to his junior season. That was it. Ohio State has happened. This has happened. And now we have to look at it. Okay, realistically, does he show a lot of tools? Have you seen some things? Like, absolutely. But is there more growth and improvement that needs to happen? I would say that's true. Now, it's like you said, there's going to be a 2-part conversation with this, because there were drops that Quinn had that you can't, so when I talk about his growth and development, there were times, what does it do for a young quarterback if those passes are being caught? I'm sure it helps him out a whole lot more. It makes it a little bit easier as far as time is concerned. So I can't put it 100% on him, but I think, Catch, we have to start looking at it out of a prism of that was his first year as a starter, first time he's really played since high school. And you know what? We may have to give him some time to grow. We may have to give him, hope he takes some good steps in 2023, and then maybe 2024 is when you're hoping for the ultimate, of ultimate steps.
I wonder about his mechanics, Alex. Like I can see a world where he studies harder. I can see a world where he tries to be a better leader, louder, tries to take control. I wonder about his footwork and his mechanics. And this is a kid that when he was in high school was pretty open about kind of patterning himself a little bit after a Patrick Mahomes, the different arm angles, the arm strength, all of these things. And then you get into college and it's like, hey, there's only one Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
Like, for a reason. There's one freakazoid in the world. And if you're trying to be necessarily that guy, you might run into some troubles. I felt like we even saw in the bowl game that when he's not getting his feet set and he's also throwing from I won't say kind of a weird arm angle, right? Where it's not from like a natural throwing motion. He's making it up in the moment. That can sometimes get him in trouble. I don't know what hopes I have that gets better this year, because it kind of feels like that's part of his DNA, and you're changing who he inherently thinks he is as a player to try to get him more under control. But I don't know that him not under control works out best for him. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't with regards to his mechanics. And I don't think that that's a problem that Sarkisian and the coaches will have with Malik Murphy and Arch Manning. Those guys are going to be much more consistent. I think they're going to take to that teaching better. I think of Ewers as kind of a wild colt with regards to footwork and mechanics. And I don't know how you completely corral that in him.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, doesn't Quinn spend his summers and like his winter breaks and all this stuff working with a private quarterback coach already? Hasn't he been working?
Yes, who I believe is Patrick Mahomes' coach.
It is Patrick Mahomes' coach.
I'm just, that's interesting because, he models himself after Patrick Mahomes. People complain sometimes about Patrick Mahomes' mechanics too. They did it with Zach Wilson. Do you remember when they talked about? And clearly that's been a tale of two careers. But these high profile athletes, sometimes these really gifted guys that do get a little off script and can do neat things off platform and really really wow you at the college game. Sometimes there are going to be things about their mechanics that make coaches want to pull their hair out, but that's also the thing. You look at them and you say, they're able to do special things that no one else can do. We've seen Quinn do unbelievable things.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not sure that, people saying, just give him the offseason to work on his mechanics and his motion or his footwork. And it's like, well, if you want to say give him another offseason to do it, a fifth one, like that's fine. But just realize that, I think they've been hacking away at this thing for a while. It could be that, he needs to learn to, play within the structure of what it is that he sort of built it as his game and, do so a little bit more confidently.
Kind of reminds me of small guards who all of a sudden all think they can be Steph Curry. because
Right.
Steph Curry exists, right? So if he exists and he does it his way, pulling up from like 40 feet, that
Right.
everybody can pull that off. And this whole show could turn into a quarterback conversation if we're not completely careful. So we'll move on from the quarterbacks. It's the initial piece of the conversation. There's a lot more questions with open-ended non-answers at this point than I think there's anything definitive that we can say. It's part of the reason why it's going to be the story of the offseason, I think. We'll let Lane close us out on the quarterback discussion in the super chat. He says, Quinn seems to play better in hurry-up spread. What is Sark's philosophy on balancing the quarterback strengths versus teaching the system? And are those questions normally resolved in the red shirt year? Good question, Lane. Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I mean, I would say that, whether they're resolved in a red shirt year, I've never really thought about it from that scenario. I would say generally you would want to take the time during the first year that you're working with the quarterback to know exactly what you have in him coming into the second year. I'm not necessarily sure that that's always going to be the red shirt year. It could be somebody coming in as a sophomore, or a transfer that's coming in that might have 2 years of eligibility. Something, but you feel like during that first year, sort of a bit of a getting to know you period that you should have rolling by the end of the season. By the start of the next season, all systems should be go with the way that the system is meshing with the quarterback. I do agree that Quinn, you give Quinn Ewers a little bit less time to, just less time to think and just kind of let things roll. That intuitively he feels, it seems like he looks a little bit better and feels a little bit better in that kind of setup. So I do agree with you that, intuitively, I don't have the numbers in front of me as far as, hurry up snaps and stuff like that, but intuitively that seems right to me. So I would say, I don't know Sark's philosophy on balancing those quarterbacks' strengths. But I would just say that Sark's a good, he's a football coach that's gotten this far on his own merit. He's certainly somebody who, knows that he knows that he needs to tailor what he's doing to the most important position on the field and the person who's distributing all the footballs.
Honor, I think Alex makes a good point, except we did see in the offense this year, Sark kind of, with regards to the deep passes, he was hell-bent on that happening. That, by God, it's there to be had because Xavier Worthy's constantly running behind coverage. We're going to make that work. And yet, 13 games into the season, it never really came together. Except I thought Quinn Ewers was at his best in the bowl game when they mixed in both the concepts of they pushed the pace a little bit. So there was a little bit of hurry up involved. But they let him throw the ball short, intermediate, kind of a controlled passing game. And it seemed to get the best out of Worthy and Ewers. So it comes back down to quarterback strengths versus teaching the system. Sarkisian would tell you that the system requires throwing the ball deep. And nobody's advocating not throwing the ball deep, but they maybe went at it a little bit more than the personnel involved probably needed it to. How much of this offense is exactly the same next year if you're Sark, or do you taper it a little more to what did work best for Quinn? And quite frankly, it's probably worked best for him since he's been here. He is incredibly accurate for the most part, short and intermediate. The further down the field you go, the more problems he has.
Yeah, Catch, it's interesting. I was trying to look up attempts, and the Iowa State quarterback throws 457, and Quinn in about 10 games throws about 296. So that's like seventh in the conference. Max Duggan is at like 397, but that's Quinn with 10 games and Max at 14. So I think I think that he's going to make it a point to throw When I've asked him about that, Sarkisian about that, at the end of the day, he said that they want to keep defenses honest, and we saw in multiple games, last season, or this, I guess it's last season, technically a little bit of this season, where he's determined. There was 49 pass attempts catch against Oklahoma State. There were 39 pass attempts against TCU. There's 31 versus Oklahoma, which isn't the crazy, and really, and it's 47 against Washington. So 47 pass attempts against Washington, 39 pass attempts versus TCU, 49 pass attempts against Oklahoma State. All three games happened. The results of all three of those games were a catch. Texas lost all three of them. So it's interesting. Like that high volume doesn't necessarily yield the results. So I think he's focusing on the guys connecting more so than anything else. But at the end of the day, he had Bijan Robinson, and there were still games last season where we were just outside of the Baylor game. You were just like, not going to utilize that run, huh? Are you? That's not going to be your thing. In this bowl game, you had an opportunity to use the running backs. Still wasn't going to be the thing that he did, or who did. It was going to be Keelan Robinson. So, Sark seems to be, to answer that question, Sark seems to be really focusing on the system. It's not like he's out here getting, dual threat quarterbacks and saying, I'm just going to mold my dual threat quarterback into, he's a dual threat. So now we'll do dual threat stuff. He's like, no, you're going to be a pocket passer and you're going to stay back there and throw. That's what he wants, and that's what he wants for his system.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, well, I just schedule adjusted it for 67.98% of snaps that Quinn Ewers played. And so if it was the same for the rest of the other 31 point whatever percent of snaps, as far as his attempts per percentage of snaps played, he would have thrown 435 attempts. So that would have put him in second place in the Big 12.
Interesting. So let's talk about the running back.
I was started going down that rabbit hole. I was like, it is more data that I need here. I need to get out of it. I was like, it's not making sense. I appreciate you picking up the pieces. I was trying to go somewhere, just couldn't finish it in real time.
Okay. I was going to say, Anwar, it reminds me of when he was asked about the go-go, and it was like, I'm going to kind of do my thing. No offense to Brennan Marion's go-go, but yeah. My offense is my offense, and it's pretty good. I think he may have that mindset in general with regards to kind of all players. If we go to the running backs real quickly, here's how I want to form the discussion on the running backs. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put Bijan, Roschon, and the rest of what they had this year in terms of running back production, in terms of quality, like just all of it encompassed on a scale of 1 to 10, you would put the group they had at where for both of you?
A perfect 10 at the top of a damn totem pole with a big eagle feather. Like, I mean, it's just as good as it goes. Bijan's one of the best running back prospects I've seen since, Saquon and, Jonathan Taylor and stuff. And then you have Roschon, who's like, he's going to be at the Senior Bowl. Roschon's going to pick up steam whenever he runs fast. We've seen the track numbers that they have on these guys from their internal testing. Whenever Roschon shows how fast he is, he's going to, yeah, man, those guys,
Okay.
I don't know if you – just from a pure talent perspective, I don't see how you couldn't,
Okay. Anwar, what about you on a 1 to 10 scale?
Somewhere between an 8.5 and a 9, I would say. I know Alice would say that's cockamamie. It's not necessarily based off of, if you're taking based off of talent, there's one thing, usage and how often, they're getting certain things, I'm not quite sure. So but I'd probably give him a solid somewhere between, so I'll cut that in half, catch. So somewhere between 8.5 and a 9, cut that in half.
I personally would probably say 9.5. Just because perfection is perfection, and, it might be close to perfection, but I'll leave open that it could get better. Although I think we're talking about one of the better running back rooms in the country this year by a wide margin. So where does that number go when you take Bijan and Roshan out and you're left with Jonathan Brooks, who I think we all like, Jaden Blue, I think we all like, CJ Baxter, we all like, but there's a decline. I don't know what the number is. Does anybody off the top of their head have an instinctive number for what remains?
They keep on running 185-pound Keelan Robinson into the teeth of the opposing defense. I give it a 0. It's garbage. I give it a flat 0. That was a nothing burger. That was a horrible set of decisions that led to so much work for Keelan Robinson as a traditional lone setback in that game. It's just crazy
miserable. That they had a month to think about it.
Just miserable.
That's what they thought of.
Just miserable. But yeah, I mean, if they give Brooks the football, if they give Jaden Blue a chance to contribute, I love Cedric Baxter. Does he go by CJ? Like, is that a Devin Campbell, DJ Campbell kind of thing?
Yeah, I think he goes by whatever you call him. Like, I think he's comfortable with both his name and then the initials.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I think CJ Baxter is like, I think he's awesome. So, I mean, I think he could come in and do. He's an early enrollee.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like he could come in and do something. There's a lot of talent there in that room, but it's like if they use it, if Keelan Robinson is somehow some lead back in that committee, it automatically makes me just super worried about just what they're thinking, what it is that they're doing. But if they're used properly, and Jonathan Brooks is given an opportunity, geez, I mean, it just doesn't it tilt you when you see him just it wasn't even on a rush, it was on the reception where he gets a reception and you just see him how good he is in space. You're just like, man, if this could have been happening through the course of the game, this game could have gone differently. They could have gotten a lot of things established on some of those drives that just never got going. But so I think with the pure talent, we're looking at probably a drop off from what I thought was like a 10 to probably like a 6.5 or something until proven otherwise. And we could have one of these guys turn into a phenom where it's like all of a sudden all of a sudden you got a guy that pop on like a Deontay Foreman did, and you're back up there at like a 9.
Well, if none of these guys transfer, there's a world where they all play together as a trio for 2 or 3 years. And then maybe when we're at the end of the back end of them as a trio, you'd call it a 10. But I agree, Alex. There's a decline. I don't know how to quantify it exactly, whether it's 6.5, 7, whatever. But there's a drop off, and it all Anwar leads to me wondering, what does it mean for the offense in 2023 that the running backs in particular aren't as good as they were in 2022? There's got to be some compensation picked up somewhere. We'll get to the offensive line in a little bit, and maybe they're the ones that help pick up the slack a little bit on this. But on paper, this offense isn't as good yet when you consider the personnel losses.
Well, so there's a couple of things, Catch. What's scary about that bowl game, because I totally agree with Alex, what's scary about the bowl game is that Sarkisian didn't feel like he can go to Brooks, and God knows he didn't go to give Jaden Blue a shot. So, he didn't even feel like he can even go, really, let's try to hammer that as determined as he is, Catch, to try to get that deep ball going, as stubborn as he is, we're going to keep running. We're going to run it again. He was not as equally determined to try to get Brooks going. So that concerns me a little bit, as far as going into the offseason, that we're given the opportunity to do so and given the opportunity to give Brooks stuff, and all the things that was said about Jaden Blue. I mean, those guys don't sniff it as far as, Brooks gets a little bit, but scores twice, and then Jaden Blue doesn't touch anything. So, here's the thing. So if Alex's numbers, let's say stay with Alex's number at a 10, your number at a 9.5, right? As far as what that room looked like in 2022, well, that resulted in 8 wins. And I know it's not all on the running back room. I know it's not just those guys. But that having a 10 and a 9.5 resulted in 8 wins. So what does that look like without a 10 and a 9.5? It's a scary thought process, because now you almost needed Cedric Baxter to come in and look really well, and you're going to probably need a lot of increase, from a lot of different components if you're going to try to say, okay, we're just going to be this complete team. That's probably the scary part going into the offseason.
Now, I had a buy or sell question on Sunday where the question was essentially asking me if I thought all three guys would be borderline 1,000-yard running backs a year ago. And I think that number I think people are looking at the amount of production that Roschon and Bijan had, and they're trying to divide it up three ways. It's like, and that's not how it all works. Like, I think the running back room is going to be really good next year, but you better leave in some room that they're going to have to learn a little bit. I mean, we saw on Thursday, it's not the same. It's not. Keelan and Jonathan Brooks, as much as we love him, and whatever Jaden Blue is, because they haven't yet turned him loose, like, it's not yet Bijan and Roschon. And then Brooks as your number 3, really, right? I mean, it's late in the third, fourth quarter, and you're bringing in that guy as your third guy, and that guy can still tear it up and rush for 100 yards on like 6 carries if the other team's not on their game. Let's move to wide receivers, because this one's kind of tricky. We don't officially know yet what's going to happen with either Xavier Worthy or Jordan Whittington. We don't really know what the number 3 wide receiver looks like with Isaiah Nayor coming off of injury. You've got to figure out a way, I think, to get Jonte Cook on the field. He's an early enrollee, so I think in about 8 months from now, Jonte Cook will have established himself somewhere, somehow. They're going to go into the portal. The passing game has to pick up the running game a little bit, and yet I don't think Sark would say as of today he has the receiving core unit that he wants. So what the hell has to happen at wide receiver for the passing game to get better, to help pick up the slack from a running game that might not quite be as good? And who can you count on? And Alex, I'll come to you first, because nobody's charted the snaps and the production and the usage and where they're used in terms of personnel groupings more than you have. Who do you feel like you can absolutely count on going into next season? Who are you hopeful of? And where do they need to go get help in your mind?
I can't believe I'm even having to ask this, but I haven't missed anything about Jordan Whittington making any announcement one way or the other, right? Like, have I missed anything? Okay.
He's not announced anything.
I felt like I was going to have a stroke or something there for a second. I'm like, wait, there's something about Whittington that I didn't write? Because
I've been hearing that they've done a good deal, a good job of creating an NIL deal that would satisfy him for another year.
Right. Oh, right.
But nothing official has come out. And then after the bowl game, he kind of had some social media remarks that might have indicated that it was his last game. I think everybody's just trying to read in to the signals without completely knowing what he means from an intention standpoint. We don't have any clarity though.
Okay. So basically then we're looking at, we'll say for now, Whittington. So you have guys who are primary slot who can also play outside in Whittington, Savion Red. Jaden Alexis played 3 snaps last? Did Jaden Alexis go in the portal? Is he still? He didn't
still on the roster.
Okay, so Jaden Alexis. At X wide receiver, you have Casey Kane, who will be a redshirt sophomore. You'll have Brennan Thompson. He played 44 snaps last year. He'll be a sophomore. He can play the X or the Z. And you have Nayer, who can play the X. So it's basically Kane and Nayer at the X. And then at the Z, what it's going to be is presumably Worthy and Brennan Thompson, right? So we're talking X, Nayer and Kane, slot, Whittington, Red, Alexis, Z, Worthy, Brennan Thompson. How many of those guys can I count on? Well, I couldn't count on Xavier Worthy during the damn Alamo Bowl. Right? But I guess, but you got to say you count. I mean, he's a stud, right? I mean, you can count on him, right? If he's coming back, you can count on him. I think you can count on Whittington. He's a versatile player. He's good. He's a senior. He's a great athlete. Other than that, Sark said all year, I guess he said in that post-game press conference, or he said something recently about how he's happy for Casey Kane, that he really came on. There have been questions all year about the third wide receiver, who it was going to be, stuff like that. He thought he really showed a lot. And starting to, I'm not done with the breakdown of the game yet on offense, so I won't have all the stuff from the bowl game, and it'll probably be later in the week, or maybe I don't even know, because I'm going to San Antonio to cover for the practices, as I told you guys, on Wednesday and Thursday. So that'll get done when it gets done. But I don't remember really thinking, coming out of that game, thinking like, wow, man, Casey Kane just really supercharged my excitement for that guy coming into spring. I think that any of those, dude, Jonte Cook can come in and just immediately take a starting job if Isaiah Nayer's not ready to go. And he probably won't be ready to go in the springtime, right?
I don't think he'd be. I don't expect that Nayor is fully released for full padded practices during the spring.
Yeah, because the injury was like 3 weeks before football started, right? It was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right. And so you're
talking about 7.5 months.
No. He's not playing spring football. No. He won't even be he won't even be out there making cuts and stuff with the trainers yet, right? He'll still be kind of doing the stuff inside, like inside the inside the bubble with some of the real rehab guys. But you got to think that Jonte Cook will come in and, I mean, don't you agree that given the guys that I think it comes down to Anwar, what they do in the portal.
I mean, it is the elephant in the room for me, because behind the scenes, I keep being told they're going to get a couple of guys from the portal at wide receiver. And because I don't know who those guys are yet and what they bring in terms of accomplishments or talent or where they would line up on the field, like it's all imaginary conjecture at this point. But you can't not think about it when we start talking about the rebuild of the roster, because it is a couple of holes that apparently will be filled at some point. Just a matter of who fills them.
Yeah, Coach, I was really finding something that's really I'm gonna give you a stat. Can I give you a stat that's kind of, I've been doing some research and I think is going to kind of blow your mind a little bit. Are you ready for this? I'm building this up and I'm hyping this up. Hopefully it lives it up to it. Okay. So the one thing I just want to focus on this for a second. I'll get to what you're saying. So the thing that needs to happen, right, is Texas has to be better as far as explosive plays are concerned, right? Now, as I did the research, Catch, do you know that Quinn Ewers' longest pass this season was 49 yards? And that was to Casey Kane
on the last throw of the game.
That was his longest pass play of the season. Okay. Now let me give you a perspective here from a ranking perspective. So I'm looking on CFP stats, right? So from long pass plays from 40 to 49 yards, right? So in that 40-ish range, Texas ranked 7th in the Big 12. I'm sorry, 8th in the Big 12 with 7 of those. Okay, let me try it one more time. 40 to 49, they ranked 8th. They only had 7 completions of 40 to 49 yards. When it came to 50 or more yards, Texas ranked dead last in the Big 12, Catch, with 0. They're the only team in the Big 12 that did not have a completion of 50 yards or more this season. For a point of comparison, Catch, who led the Big 12 at 50 plus this season? And this is all passing.
I'm going to say TCU.
You want to guess what their number was?
10.
14.
Wow.
14. So Texas didn't have one pass completed for 50 or more yards. TCU had 14 of those completed. If you talk about what needs to happen, that's what needs to happen.
You got me. That was a good one. I think even focusing on the 40 to 49, right, at some point, it reminds me of the year, I don't remember what year it was, same issue, explosive plays, and so you talked about it throughout the offseason. You constantly mentioned it. to I think it was Herman at the time. And then
Herman,
it turned out like the next year they had a bunch of explosives.
Yeah, I think they didn't have I think it was 50 yards or more, or something to that effect. And that's all I asked him about all off season, to the point I think he got tired of it. But
then they got him.
Yes.
So you have to, for the next 9 months, just harp on that stat over and over and over again. And will it to happen.
I'll start writing it today. I can write my pulpit today, Catch.
So that by week 3, Sarkisian's like, don't ever ask me that question again. We've got 4 in the first 2 weeks, kind of a thing.
Yeah. But I'm with you, Catch. One of those guys that has to hit, So a couple of things have to happen. If Xavier stays, one of the things I asked Sarkisian about after the game was kind of like, you're forcing that deep pass. What has to happen? And kind of said that Washington game was kind of like an example or microcosm of their entire season, which is, the guys are consistently catching the ball, right? And so, we saw drop passes all throughout the season. There is a stat out there, and I think you had it in your column about Xavier and the number of drops from the season, where that ranks, and and then whoever put that one out there. But it wasn't just Xavier. Jordan Whittington had some drops. Like, we saw other guys have drops this season, so those guys have to get good. But it's clear Sarkisian wants explosive plays. He's got to have guys that can get down the field. So whether it's the incoming guys, whether it's some of the guys that were they signed last season, that maybe play a little bit on special teams, but you've got it's clear in the Sarkisian offense, he wants guys that can fly down the field and get open and catch the ball. That has to be a kind of a huge priority for this group in the offseason.
RC coming in hot in the super chat saying, hot take, Nayor back and starts at X and Cook. So I guess he's saying Nayor, X, and Cook are your starting 3. Baxter isn't ready to start. Brooks and Blue aren't ready either. Does Sark move Witt back to halfback? He's a beast. Let's work our way backwards from this. No way does Jordan Whittington get moved to halfback.
That guy can't take – that's too many hits on his body.
Too much. Yeah.
But I do think he brings it – and I don't know that you can count on Nayor. I mean, boy, if he comes back in 12 months from the injury and he's the same or better than he was before, then obviously you've got a player. It's hard to know with guys coming back from that injury. Sometimes they look like they don't skip a beat. Sometimes it looks like they need a year to kind of get back. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they don't ever come back the same way. So I don't know how to personally view Nayor coming into this season other than to say, to me, you have to treat him like found money if he hits.
It's got to be like a Troy O'Meary from before,
You've got a plan without him. And if he comes back and forces your hand, it's a great problem to have. But if you are planning on him being the guy and then he's not ready to be that guy, you've left yourself in a dangerous position. I think there's a real interesting question, though, about, okay, so he's got Nayor, X, and Cook as the starters. Is Jordan Whittington, as much as we like him, is he good enough is he so good that they can't get an improvement in the portal or find one on the roster? Is he as good as it can get?
Well, he's not as good as he can get, but he's a good player. I mean, I don't think, certainly not on the existing roster right now, is there anybody better than him as far as guys who played snaps this season, or Nayor, for example. I would say, like you said, we have to kind of wait and see for him. But we're talking, like we said, we're talking about guys like Casey Kane and Savion Red and Brendan Thompson. And as much as we love Thompson coming in, he didn't do much this year, man. Like he played 44 snaps. It's like I think that Whittington. I mean, I don't. I look at the transfer market and I look at the transfer portal and I look at some of these wide receivers, some of the ones that we've talked about on Slack and stuff like that. And I don't know how many are still in play of the guys we sort of originally talked about that were of interest. Some of those dudes, some of those SEC dudes, maybe. Say maybe. Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a maybe. But I don't think they would just come in and immediately catch kind of, to take your phrase, they're not just coming in and taking Whittington's cornbread. They're not just going to come right in and do that. I think
the thing about Whittington was that he was good this year, but I don't remember a single time in 13 games where Jordan Whittington made a wow play where I thought, wow, okay.
Like
Hit
one of
that
those
guy the ball that way again.
One of those like Laviska Shenault kind of plays that you would think a dude like him that's big, big, strong, fast dude, right?
He finished the year with 1 touchdown.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. Man, maybe it's just I know Whittington is really he is just an athlete. He's an exquisite athlete that I've always been so frustrated with the injuries and stuff, man. Like I'll tell you, like when you're around those guys and you're standing next to him, you look at Whittington, you're like, oh, jeez, dude, look at this dude. You know what I mean? It's just like, my God, look at this guy. But he's brimming with potential. He's got really soft hands. He's explosive. It's just, yeah, I do agree with you though, Catch. If you're just basing it off of, if an alien came down to earth and just watched the Texas football games and didn't know any of the associated factors with Whittington, he'd probably say he's kind of a jag. I think that's a fair thing to say.
I'm trying to figure out why they're not getting more there. And is it the passing game's not being directed there? Is it because Quinn either isn't comfortable with him or with what is Quinn a one-read guy? And if Whittington's not the first read in the concept designs, that he's not going to get the ball. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it. To me, on paper, if you've got a wide receiver starter who is averaging about 40, 50 yards a game and only gets in the end zone once, if you strip the recruiting ranking and the name and everything off and just look at the production, seems like that's somebody that needs to be upgraded. But I think upgrading Whittington, as we've all talked about, it's easier said than done. I don't know who it is that upgrades him, but it does feel like next year they need their secondary receiver of the non-tight end variety to be more than 600 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, you gotta, there's a good and bad. You gotta hope that Isaiah Nayor is that guy, but the only thing is catching. It's the weird thing about what we do. It's our job to provide practice reports, but the problem is with practice reports, that doesn't always translate to on the field success during the regular season. It's one guy going against someone, multiple times. And I just always think back, it's like, I like to think, okay, this season could have been different with Isaiah Nayor, but I remember every Ray Thornton practice report that we heard, and it was like this guy was the second coming of like Bruce Smith or something like that. And it just never happened. So,
well, onward, even with the practice reports, everybody was telling us in December, oh, Quinn and Xavier, they have been spending time together. You guys should see the deep balls. They're finally clicking. And then we get to the bowl game, and they're not clicking. So,
yeah.
I think we're giving the practice reports, and even we as the givers of the practice reports are like, don't you guys go taking this to the bank now.
Don't blame me. Don't blame me if this thing don't work out. We're just telling you what we're being told. Again, this is practice against their own team. We're not projecting that this person is going to be, 1,200-yard receiver or anything crazy like that. Man, Catch, are we going to just do an offensive show this week and a defensive show next week? Okay.
We're going to have to do defense next week because the offense
I was going to say, man, I was getting worried.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I got to take my daughter to lunch and stuff, man.
Don't worry. We got 2 position groups to work out. Real quick, Trey Brown asks a non-offensive question in the super chat. Does Texas need to go after D-line in the portal? A&M's Anthony Lucas just hit the portal. The answer to that is, if you can get your hands on a badass on the defensive line in the portal by any means, yes, whether there's a need or not, you can never have enough badass defensive linemen. Yeah. Specifically, they need an edge upgrade by any hook or crook that they can get there. We'll have this conversation probably next week. We'll follow this up. But the question they're going to have, Trey, at the edge position, if they're looking to upgrade, do they think the edge they'll get is better than what they think they're eventually going to get out of Ethan Burke, Colton Vasek, Jamon Tapp? They've recruited the edge position really well the last couple of years. It hasn't materialized on the field yet.
I can't wait to see this Akana dude down there tomorrow, right? At San Antonio. Like there's going to be some options, but like you said, man, that's to talk. I know you're answering this question. I guess that's to talk.
No, but if you go get another guy,
yeah,
you're potentially making the team better, but you're also potentially stunting the growth of the guys that you've been building up to. It's another one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't questions. I think that if there's a monster, you go get him, but maybe only if it's a monster. We're no longer in the OVO Gofu, Ray Thornton, Ben Davis type of.
You should be out of that sweep. You should be out of that sweepstakes for good, man, after you've seen those results.
Simple as that. So, yes, Trey, by all means, if it's the right guy, but the right guys don't grow on trees in the portal at that position. All right, real quickly, tight ends. They've got the best in the conference in Jatavion Sanders. They've got a guy they really like to work with him in tandem. Oh, God, my brains. And Gunnar Helm. Juan Davis is kind of who knows what's really going on with him right now because of injuries. And then they've got the freshman coming in, which unless Deuce Robinson joins the fold, you're talking about a couple of guys that I think are projects and need to get healthy. Mm-hmm. You know, William Randall's a guy that he tore up his knee, so you're not expecting him to do anything in year one. He's rehabbing. I don't know that you're thinking Spencer Shannon's going to do anything. So you're left with two that you can count on. Now, one of them's the best in the Big 12 and an All-America candidate, and the other one's a really good player. Is two enough? Should they go to the portal for a third tight end, or do you hope that Juan Davis can get back from injury and develop enough that he can be – because if they lose Jatavion Sanders to injury, that position's screwed. But you're not going to find anybody remotely like him anywhere. I mean, he is a rare bird. I'm really curious. There's some interesting tight end questions out there that I don't have answers for.
Well, I mean, I have some answers. I think that here's the reason why Gunnar Helm can't get hurt. It's because they don't have anybody else they've shown that they trust or like as an inline tight end.
So they've got two guys that can't get hurt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you just look at Juan Davis, all right, only 32 snaps in 2022, but out of those 32 snaps, he only played 4 of them in line. So, I mean, that's 12.5%. Jatavion Sanders played 12.69% of his snaps in line. They just didn't play any of them in line. Gunnar Helm played 43% of his snaps in line. You know, I mean, that was the most inline snaps of anybody that wasn't Andre Carrick, who was just a jumbo tackle that lined up next to him. You know, so Gunnar Helm is the guy that they like as their inline guy. Juan Davis has not profiled. I think maybe look back 2021. Because maybe Juan Davis might have played more snaps in 2021.
I think he did.
He did in 2022. Maybe it's a larger sample to see. Maybe they got him in line a little bit more because, I mean, only the 4 inline snaps seems like too small of a sample. So let's see the tight end usage chart for 2021. So Juan Davis in 2021. Oh no, he only played 23 snaps. He played 6 snaps in line that year, so it would have been 26%, but it's just too small of a sample size. Still, you know, if you look at what Jatavion Sanders did this year, playing so much H-back, Juan Davis was still 65% at the H-back last season. They like him as an H-back. They like him in that JT role, split out H-back seam kind of weapon, right? I don't know who that guy. I don't know who that is going to be. But, man, do you really want to go into the portal for just an inline tight end with the other needs that this team has? I don't.
Well, if you say no, just ask yourself what happens if there's an injury.
Played Juan Davis in line. I don't know. Yeah. I think that thought experiment that we just had, it made me realize what I hadn't realized before. This like Gunnar Helm's important to
Yes.
it's like he's important to what this team's trying to do, at least from a schematic standpoint.
Alex, you know what this comes down to? It's when I say leave a few extra spots in the portal for shopping and don't take these high-risk high school prospects that are probably going to take 2 or 3 years of development, if you can even give them 2 or 3 years of development in 2022 before they're in the portal. This is where I say don't take the high school kid, leave a few extra spots in the portal so that of all of your needs, the backup tight end's not the biggest that they have. But if you had a little bit of extra scholarship room so that you could go get a tight end who could be your number 3 guy and do some of the things that gives you an injury insurance kind of, deal. That's what I think you would do, but I don't think they're going to address tight end in the portal. No, I don't think they will. But if we're doing a show in October and Gunnar Helm gets hurt and he misses 4 games, I think we'll be talking about the impact that has on the offense, and we'll go back to the discussion that we're having right now, and we'll say, oh, maybe with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, now that we know an injury occurs, maybe you would try to find that guy when you otherwise didn't in December and January.
Agreed.
I don't really know that there's anything else we can say about the tight end position. You want to just finish up on the O-line?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go for it.
Isn't the O-line the place that we all would think where the most progress can be made? That they leaned on a bunch of young guys. Those guys are still ascending. That whatever this year was is the basement for what you're going to get from what Texas has with its group of offensive line. I'm optimistic, Alex, that this group's only going to get better next year, and that we're worried about the quarterback and we're kind of worried about the dip that the running back position takes, and we've got questions about a couple of other positions. My only question about the offensive line is how much progress a guy like DJ Campbell can make. He didn't have a full offseason a year ago. He will this year. There are a number of guys on the offensive line that kind of fit that category. How much better can the freak get, right? I mean, Kelvin Banks has the upside to be the single best player in the Big 12 next year. Does he quite get there? Or is he just a total badass and not quite, Goliath at that point? What do you think of, Alex, when you think of the offensive line going into next season?
Well, if you ask Pro Football Focus, Kelvin Banks wasn't even the best on the team. But
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not asking for, but nice job of getting your Pro Football Focus dig in there.
Do you know my biggest question about the offensive line is how are they going to play everybody who needs to play? What kind of situation is that after this junk we've dealt with for a decade? It's like, they were good this year. Christian Jones was a revelation, right? And so it's going to be hard to replace. I can't believe I'm saying this. It's going to be hard to replace Christian Jones. But here's the thing: Cam Williams is awesome, and I've told everybody here, for everybody watching, I've told you for 2 years now. He's really good. He's going to be good, and so I think it's just going to be exciting to see what he's going to be able to bring and how he can build on. He is so there are things that Christian Jones couldn't do that Cam Williams can absolutely do. Cam Williams is so long. I can't wait for everybody just to see him. The way his arms just swallow people up like one of those, some kind of those underwater, like an octopus or something. Like, it's just, you try and convert inside on him, you're not going to be able to do it. You'll get swallowed up. So, but the way he moves, how big he is. So you have him at right tackle. You have Kelvin Banks at left tackle. I don't think you can bench Jake Majors, right? I don't think that you can project that happening.
Didn't he say there are like 5 guys that can play center?
Yeah, but that was in the context of who the backup center was. Correct, Onmore? With Coach Flood, yes. with the audio
correct.
That you sent me. Yeah, so that was in the context of a backup center. It just feels like with Jake Majors, as much as people might complain, and me too, we'll point out the fact that he has trouble in solo base assignments in zone, like with his core strength, and that's not going to change. I think that they think he knows the plays. He knows these guys are young. They're coming in. It's going to be a youth infusion. They need somebody out there who's the captain of the ship, right? And then so now that basically, Hayden Connor, I don't think you're going to bench him. They talked about a dude who could play all 5 positions. They love him. He had a little bit of a down year this year. I don't care what Coach Flood says. I feel like he was still a little bit hurt during the season. But then, so you have Cole Hudson, who they clearly liked and played ahead of DJ Campbell for the whole year. Then towards the end of the year, DJ Campbell's creeping in, gets up to 100 snaps by the end, plays most of the Alamo Bowl game, looks better. So you got those guys, and we haven't even started to talk yet. So that's 6, and we haven't even started to talk about Neto at all. That's 7 players that you could be legit excited about. So it's different than before. When you have this many variables with these young players that haven't played very much, of course they're going to take their lumps. They're going to take their lumps, but the upside's just like, it's like something that we haven't seen. It's like something that we haven't seen before. And the reason why it's different than just saying like, dude, these guys coming in are like, they're going to be good. They have a lot of upside as prospects. The reason it's different is we've seen Kelvin Banks do it at an elite level already, and so you at least know that piece is already in place and you got that thing on lock, over there at your left tackle, which is clearly the most important spot.
Anwar, it's a different world on the offensive line than we've ever known it to be.
Yeah, actually, Catch, can you take over the conversation real quick? I'm just putting a quick note on our board. Just kind of, it's a small note, but Zach Edwards has entered the transfer portal. So it's just deep snapper.
Who's Zach Edwards?
Yeah, he's number snapper. 45, the deep snapper, I think.
Yeah, he was replaced by Lance St. Louis, I believe. He after like 3 games. So
hey, look, the adult dating bots are in the chat. They know when we've got a hot one. Honestly, we can get ready to wrap up. We do have one little super chat question we can get to. Alex, I don't know that there's a whole lot more to talk about with the offensive line other than they got a bunch of dudes there.
Yeah, man.
Go out and get anybody.
I get headaches at night thinking how they're going to put them all together. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see.
It's the best problem any Texas offensive line coach has had in half a generation.
Yeah.
RC asks, do we view Alfred Collins as a bust right now? Yeah. Doesn't mean that he remains that way forever, but he hasn't been a prominent piece of the defense at this point. So as a guy that viewed Alfred Collins as a borderline 5-star prospect, yeah.
When I first saw Alfred Collins, where'd he come from? Bastrop? Was it Bastrop he came from? I forget what it was. He'd come in with his dad to a camp or something like that. It was one of those that Jason needed my help with, just going around and wrangling up the guys and asking if they got offers and stuff at one of these camps before you'd hired Cole and some of these others. And I was just like, I was asking him, like, hey, did you get, I forgot what the exact thing was, but I was talking to him and his dad. And, or it might have been him and his coach or something. But anyway, the thing that I remember was that Alfred Collins had said, he just said, like, yeah, I could really see myself being here for the next 3 years. And I look up at this big dude, I'm just like, so big even back then as a high school senior. And like, he's already talking about only being here 3 years. I was just like, man, this dude's got big plans, and I can sort of see why. I mean, look at him, Jesus. But, based on those kinds of initial expectations, I hate to call a guy a bust. I mean, he could have a good year, but, he hasn't even really found a real spot on the defensive line. I mean, he plays as a defensive end in that 3 linebacker package. And he'll come in and sometimes play defensive tackle. Sometimes they'll stick him at nose. It feels like Alfred Collins feels like a piece where they're still trying to figure out how to fit him in the exact way that they want to as an every down player.
Well, and he doesn't project as a starter on paper next year. I mean, You're talking about Sorrell, Murphy, Sweat, and then whoever emerges at the edge position, and that's not him.
And it won't be him. Yeah,
so. I want Alfred Collins. You know what I think about with Alfred Collins is at the end of the year, a lot of the recruiting services went to the max for him, and Rivals kept him as a mid 4-star, and he's kind of lived up to the Rivals ranking more so than he's lived up to. And I put myself in the mix of those who elevated Alfred Collins to a higher. I thought he was kind of on the cusp of, I think I ranked him 10th and had him as maybe my last super blue chip.
It's kind of hard not to, man, when you see him as a high schooler. It's like
it just hasn't happened yet. I'm reminded that when Herman, in that same column on The Athletic, I guess not column, but just article, that one of the former Texas coaches referred to Hudson Card in the same breath as Aaron Rodgers. That same article, one of the coaches on Herman's staff, and I've always suspected that it was Herman himself, but I don't know. I'm just guessing. They were talking about how Alfred Collins was going to be the no doubt about it best player on the defense. Mm-hmm. And it just hasn't happened yet. So, I'm like, Alex, I hate to call anybody a bust, but he has not yet worked out at a high level. One last thought, just related to the offensive line, Alex. Did you see my 10 thoughts from the weekend where I broke down the offensive linemen from the 2020 recruiting class in the state of Texas?
Oh, I've read your 10 thoughts. Sometimes when it gets to the nerdy recruiting stuff that you do, man, I kind of skip that one. If I would have known that that's what it was, I definitely would have read it.
I don't mean to sneak up on you with like a sneak attack question.
Okay.
Do you know who the best, most productive offensive lineman from the state of Texas in 2020 has been by, at this point, a country mile?
I can't even think of who the candidates were. I get
Jake Majors.
Out of
every offensive lineman that came from the state of Texas in 2020, Jake Majors is not only the best, he's the only guy among 4-star and 3-star guys that is a consistent starter.
What, do you have I'm interested to look at the LSR. Who are some other names?
Here, I'll read it out to you while I've got. And I'll do it in order of like how their rankings were, okay?
Okay.
I'm pulling it up right now. I'm doing a re-ranking is the reason why this even came up. Mm-hmm. So I'm re-ranking the top of the list. And then I got to the offensive linemen, and I was just like, where are the good ones? So here we go, okay? You've got Akinola Ugbanayai. I'm sure I butchered that name. I apologize. He's at Texas A&M. He's played in 14 games in 2 years. He's made 4 starts in each of those 2 years, but he's just kind of on the peripheral outside of what they've done. You've got Garrett Hayes, who signed with TCU, was the number 135 guy in the country. He's just been a backup so far in his career. He's not one of the reasons why they're playing in the national championship game. You've got Nate Anderson, who was an offensive tackle that signed with Oklahoma. He's only played in 4 career games. You've got Chad Lindbergh, who signed with Georgia. He's only played in 9 games in 2 years, all of them as a reserve, not on the 2 deep. You've got Tykees Crawford, who was at Charlotte, transferred to Arkansas, and has made 2 career starts at guard. You've got Carrick, who just transferred to Tennessee. You've got Cortland Ford, who's at USC and is a backup left tackle. You've got Joshua Bankhead, who's now we're in the 3-star ranks, has been a backup for 2 years at Texas A&M. You've got Damian George, the kid that was at Alabama that started a few games last year, but only played 20 snaps this season. That's as good as it gets. Whereas,
wasn't Damian George ranked higher than? Wasn't he ranked higher than 3 stars?
Damian George was not. He was ranked as a 3-star. In the Rivals ranking, I had Damian George ranked a little higher. Rivals had him as the number 57 player in the state, whereas Jake Majors was ranked as the number 20 player in the state. Whatever we all think of Jake Majors.
And what was Lindbergh ranked as?
Lindbergh was 25th in the state, number 179 overall. So just essentially the same as Majors. I mean, we're quibbling at 20 and 25.
And so he hadn't played at South Carolina or wherever. Where did he go?
Georgia.
He hadn't played. Well,
he's not on the 2 deep. Oh. George has been ahead in so many games by such large margins that they're able to get their third-team offensive lineman in a few times.
Whoa. It's crazy, man.
All of that's really to say what a dud of a year for offensive linemen in the state of Texas. And it just shows you, man, sometimes you can only be as good as the talent allows for you to be. And that Majors is the best of that group. And he's a guy that we wonder about whether or not you can upgrade with.
Yeah,
Speaks
man.
to, that offensive line class for Texas was Majors, Carrick, Logan Parr, and Jalen Garth.
And everybody was praying for Lindbergh. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So I just was fascinated that when it was all said and done, Jake Majors was the king of the mountain so far. Hey, maybe one of these guys emerges. I talked about Garrett Hayes at TCU. Who knows? Maybe starting next year, he's a total badass. And in a year or two, we'll look at the body of work from all these guys, and it'll look a little bit different. But you could add up all of the starts that all of the other guys that I just mentioned have made so far in their careers, every single guy, and they don't add up to the 25 starts that Majors has made in each of the last 2 years, and not including the 2 that he made at the end of his freshman season.
That's amazing. So,
Anyway. See what kind of dorky stuff you're missing out on?
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
when
man,
you
right,
skim
right,
through my sections.
You're like 48% of the 4 stars that are the 5.8 4 stars. Yeah.
Alex, don't worry. I don't think anybody else read that section either, because the only person that commented on it thought that I was hyping Majors up instead of what I was really doing was revealing how bad the class was.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I thought that was interesting. Let's get into party shots and wrap this bad boy up. Somehow we did the offense today, never really got to the defense, and we're an hour and 15 minutes in. One last super chat question. How do you grade Sark after year 2? An A+ as a recruiter, a C- as a coach on the field, based on a 13-12 record after 25 games.
I mean, I would say I agree with Catch.
Bonmar, you got any deviations from that?
Tom G.
I was like, nope, I'm good.
I hung out with Tom in San Antonio. So
You almost got into a fight. Are you going to tell the story?
Tom, I'll have Tom. Tom will come on Wednesday, and
You are saving it for a different show.
Yeah, I'll have Tom come on Wednesday, and he can talk. He can fill in the blanks of certain things that because I did have a couple of drinks in me, so I want him to fill in a couple of blanks as well. But yeah,
Alex, just so you know, so was it on your birthday night?
No. No. I think I was back home. My birthday's on the 30th. So it was the day before the game. So it was the 28th.
So he's hanging out with Tom G, Alex, and they almost got into a fight with some Washington fans.
I can't wait to hear about that.
It really weren't doing it. Really wasn't us. Oh, and you know who else was there? Aaron Hogan was there at the bar with his wife, and they were looking at us. And then eventually they started talking to us. She said, oh, she didn't know what was going on. So she says, yeah, I thought you were just an asshole, but now I know the story, and now I understand why.
I love Aaron Hogan's wife, Nadine. She's awesome.
She's very cool.
All right, parting shots. Anybody got any?
Yeah, I got a quick one.
Go for it.
Just easy, real quick and easy. On Thursday, my oldest son turns 10 years old, so happy 10th birthday to you, Maximus. That's it. That's my parting shot.
I've never known a world of Anwar without a world of Maximus, so happy early 10th birthday to Maximus. Yeah, it's amazing to think that he's 10. Remember, Alex, when we all got together for that dinner at Eddie V's, and Max was just tiny?
And Dustin made the most idiotic decision ever. They're ordering swordfish.
That's what Alex remembers the most.
He had never had it before, and he wanted to try. I'm like, dude, it's a very gamey tasting fish. It's a unique tasting fish. It's not a light kind of airy fish. He's like, no, man, I'll give it a try. He gets this big kind of purple-looking swordfish steak. I mean, Ketch was paying for dinner, man. I'm like, dude, I was like, get like a ribeye or something, man. What the hell is wrong with you?
Well, see, now all these years later, he knows that he should listen to you if you're talking about fish, and you were just some random guy at that point.
Yeah, probably. That's definitely true.
Now he knows you're the fisherman, and if you're telling him gamey fish,
it's full of mercury, man. It tastes bad. It's like, what are you doing? Yeah, it's crazy, man. I don't know. I don't really have a parting shot, Sketch. So I'll say this. I'm looking forward to getting down to San Antonio these next couple of days. Not looking forward to the gas, paying for gas and stuff down there, but a couple of days to go down. I think Jason sent me the timing of them, and it's like they're from 10 to noon this year. Both of them are. They're not back to back. And so this way I'm going to be able to get down to 2 because I'll be able to get back, knock on wood, theoretically be able to get back in time to pick up my kids. Normally I can only do it for one day because it's my wife's first week back at work and after Christmas and all the rest. So it'd be cool, man, getting down there for a couple padded practices, checking some of these guys out. I've been dying to see some of them live. And,
Anthony Hill.
I've been dying to see a lot of these guys, dude. It's going to be really, really cool. So I'll have some content with just my thoughts on that. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. I might just do something where I just do like a live thing when I'm there and just kind of, and like in the thread, just kind of say my thoughts, while I'm there instead of having to come back and pick up my daughter and then write something out. But I'll get it figured out, man. We'll have some cool stuff from that. Jason's already down there. So yeah, man, you can stay tuned over on Orangebloods.
My final parting shot is just Zach Edwards is in the portal because Lance St. Louis took his JOB.
Yeah.
That was one of the true freshmen that everybody's like, why did they offer a scholarship to Lance St. Louis? And in the end, he becomes a starting long snapper, forces essentially Zach Edwards into the portal because I'm guessing Zach Edwards wouldn't have gone into the portal if he had kept his job.
Catch, I got a question. This is a horrible question. Is Zach on scholarship or is he just a guy?
He's a non-scholarship walk-on.
Right. Oh, parting shot. Shout out Michael Taft. I told you guys, man, he's going to get on scholarship. I told you my guy's getting on scholarship. Did you see the video of it?
Oh, yeah. Those videos are always awesome.
Always awesome, dude. Always awesome. But yeah, man. So yeah, I wanted to add that onto my parting shot too, man.
In the end, that guy should have been on scholarship from the very beginning.
Yeah, man. But it's probably
one of those watch that state championship game.
Yeah.
We all came away from that game like that guy's a badass.
Yeah, man.
And now he's a scholarship player, and maybe we'll all think of him a little bit differently when he's on the field. He won't be, whenever a non-scholarship guy is on the field, it's like Tiny Tim. It's like, oh, look at little Tiny Tim playing safety. He's a walk-on. It's cute. Mm-hmm. Now he's just a legit made man, and it changes the way that you look at guys. That's it. For myself, for Anwar Richardson, for Alex Dunlap, and for our lovely partner, DeadSoxy.com. Use that promo code OrangeBloods. Get your 25% off. Happy New Year's. Here's to a fantastic 2023. RC, you get in at the buzzer. Chance Sark catches poop for the outburst at the bowl. 0. It's already a forgotten story, even if we chuckle about it a little bit. As we did yesterday. I would advise you to go check out the Monday Overreaction show.
Yeah, I'd advise you to keep your hands off Sark, man. That's what I'd say.
Well, I'm not going to get into it.
No, just go to the Monday Overreaction show towards the end, and Catch will talk about Sark's man boobs. And that's all you need to know.
It's true.
That's all you need to know.
It's true. The elephant in the room on that story is that Sark's got a little baby set of man boobs, and every time when a man gets old enough that he has them, he's self-conscious about them, and he just doesn't want a guy grabbing on him. It's as simple as that. Simple as that. Anyway, for myself, who speaks from experience, and everybody affiliated with the show, you guys have a great day.